I'm interested in two things. You can maybe answer either, whichever. Do you have an earliest memory of nature? Seán, do you? We saw you as a 2-year-old today.
Yeah, I'm a bit weird like that. I can remember birding when I was 2. Like I was a hyper kid. Like I was a bit of a handful, to be honest with you. And my parents quickly learned that the only thing that calmed me down was getting me out into nature. And my dad was lumbered with that task. So he used to bring me down to the local nature reserve, a place called Costello. It's this amazing marsh, about a 15-minute walk from our house. And in the beginning, when I couldn't speak, he would imitate the sounds and I would burst out laughing. And when I was older then, I started to name them. I started to tell them what he was imitating. And that's where it all started. And then the other one was a memory with my grandfather. My grandfather, I don't have very many memories of him because he passed away when I was fairly young, but I do remember him pointing out a magpie to me, and it was the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen in that moment. And I can still remember it. I can still remember it sitting up there on the top of the tree. I think it's a nice memory to have of him, you know.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Laura?
So I grew up very close to the Dodder River in Dublin. Mancom would know it well. And I remember that ducks used to come into our back garden, and I'd only ever seen them in the pond, and I was about 4 or 5, and I remember thinking, they're coming so close to the house. Like, this is amazing. They're not afraid of us because we had bread to give them and everything. But that's my earliest memory of thinking, wow, we're so close to this. Even in a city, we're so close if we come across nature day to day.
Was it always something for you, Fiach? You're an ecologist by training. Was it always part of your life, or did you come to it later in life or double back around to it?
I'd say I always had like a vague interest in the ecology and the environment up until I was maybe coming towards 5th and 6th year. But definitely I think, and this time I'll transport you to Carlow, it was just, I think, growing up there in a rural area, what my parents would probably call baiting the road with sticks, being out in the hedges, running through the fields down to the little woodland and the stream. I think growing up in that kind of environment where you do have access to nature again, it does rub off on you. Maybe kind of set me on that path as well.
It's a really interesting one. Sorry, Tania.
Can I just sort of give a shout out to our elders, because you were talking about your dad, and when you told me that question was coming, I was standing beside Diran de Butler, and obviously Roisin is here. And I thought to myself, we're really kind of standing on the shoulders of people who've gone before us. There's lots of us here in this room. But I was really lucky that how I thought about the environment was very affected by Eamon, by people like Ethna and Michael Viney, who we've lost recently, by people like Professor Emer Colleran. All of us as kids, you may remember, came down here to Clare to fight the Interpretive Centre at Mullaghmore. And I just want to say that we're all here, but we stand on the shoulders of people who did it when it was not a popular or profitable thing to do.
On that, Tania. And thanks so much for making the effort to come down after your mum passed, and we really do appreciate it so much. Do you have a sense, Tania, and maybe Laura, to some extent, for some reason, I feel you both might have insight here on how we can start a popular revolution back towards nature? How do we, maybe that one's for you, Laura, like you're in the game of convincing people things. Is it possible, or is it innate? Or who in the room feels connected to nature? Hands up. Does anyone not? Wouldn't admit it at a Hometree event. Okay, so the job's been done on all of us, but yeah, is it a as Tania said, is it just something we get given? Is it circumstance of where we grew up? How do we reconnect people?
You know what, I think it's really hard. We were speaking earlier in the session about not only attention, but, you know, having to be really good at spreading the word and spreading our stories and telling our stories really well, because we're battling against narratives that do not connect us very often. So there are, I guess, more desirable ways that are all being expressed here by so many people that we want to hear more of. So I think, but for me, the power is in not only redirecting our attention to nature, but but the awe that is inspired by the people who are connected to it. So I think sometimes we talk a lot about nature, but not the people who connect us to it and those stories that are told, because the stories are the things that then when you're out of the community or out of this type of space, that run your imagination forward, I think.
Bill McKibben had this thing about climate change when people said, what can I do about climate change? He just said, talk to people about it. Just have conversations about it. And I think
I've
that's
seen
where
lists where people are like, what's the best thing that I can do? You know, change your pension fund, all this stuff. Have a conversation. And I think as Irish people, you know, talking about storytelling and myths and legend and all this stuff, we need stories. You know, I was speaking about, you know, how it's so much easier these days to imagine the worst. And we need to all start imagining the things we really, really want. And that's what's been happening really well here, because there are people here who are so connected to the land, who are so inspired by one another that the stories just come. And that's infectious.
Fiach, you're working right at the coalface of it. You're, I think, one of the most influential groups in relation to nature are the landowners, and they tend in Ireland to be farmers. Are you finding you can inspire them? Are they already inspired but constrained? Where's it all at, do you think? And do you have a lot of hope? The new programs you're offering going to change things?
So I think, like, at the end of the day, in this country, everybody does want the same thing. Everybody wants a healthy landscape. We want rivers and streams that are filled with trout and salmon. We want to see grouse on the hills, cuckoos calling in May. Farmers are much the same. I think when farmers are given support and direct support, usually kind of face-to-face support, and you take the time to show the initiative and to bring them along, they're certainly willing to come along. But they do just need that bit of support on the ground. Face-to-face interaction, I think, is really, really important, and extend some goodwill as well.
Brilliant. I think, William, face-to-face interaction, you were weaving grass today, and I know some of your other projects have really literally directly connected people with nature. That was beautiful to see today, the grass being woven and the kind of handovers being done. One person would come in and one person would step out, and it kept going. Do you see, obviously you believe in it, it's your life's work, but like the role of the arts in connecting people?
Absolutely, but I think it's broader than just the arts. I think we're living in a time where we can't be siloed and separated. We have to kind of cross-fertilize and collaborate across all different forms. And I think that's what's interesting to me, just generally as an artist, is to hear stories, to understand different perspectives that I wouldn't normally maybe be exposed to. So a lot of my work is about creating those spaces, and I suppose, going back to face to face, it's also like hands to hands, like working side by side. I think using our bodies as much as our minds and our voices to connect to each other. I do a lot of work with people who are new to the country, who've just arrived, asylum seekers, migrants, people who don't know Ireland, the land of Ireland, but bringing them in connection with people who do know the land, I think is really powerful and gives an opportunity for, a deep, I suppose it's more information, it's more knowledge, and what you understand again and again is that we're more connected than we think. Yeah.
Seán, I might leave the last word with you. What's the feedback been like? It feels like a mini revolution you've set off yourself just by being. You probably would say it wasn't even a choice; it was just who you were. What's the feedback been like? And maybe I'll let you all a last word about what you think people could do to be more immersed in the natural world.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started my project, it was kind of like almost like a selfish thing for me to keep me occupied and to follow my passion. But then as time went on and I started to share sounds with people, I realized that people were really reacting, and I thought that it was such a nerdy niche topic, and it really blew me away, and it made me see things really differently, and it made me realize like people do care a lot. And I think to really to really make from my perspective anyway, I think to really make a positive change, you need to make people feel for the things that are around us and the things that we are potentially losing. You know, there's so much beauty, not just in birdsong, but in wildlife in general around the country. And I don't know, I found a new lease of life in this, and the reaction has been way more than I ever anticipated. In fact, I found it, I'm an introvert, and I found the whole thing quite overwhelming in the beginning. But then I realized that everything, and I mean everything, has been positive. So yeah, I just hope that what I'm doing can hopefully, you know, make people fall in love with the nature that we have and make a difference that way.
I really resonate with that selfish thing. I come home from work and I'm like, the poor dog hasn't been walked at all. Like, this is a disgrace. I'm just going to have to take the dog out for a walk and just slide off to the local woods for an hour to get my fix. Lads, I want to give people their dinner. We'll wrap it up. Thanks so much for all of you for joining. I think this is probably one of the last times we'll be speaking to a real big group at the summer school. It's been the best one so far, and I hope we can do it bigger and better next year. And I hope all of you come back. There's a couple of brilliant events on tomorrow. Look on Eventbrite; they're still open. There's probably a couple of tickets left for some of them, so please come back. I should say a special thanks. I've possibly said it a few times already today to Creative Ireland. They've really supported us in making all this happen. So, good on you. Thanks, guys.